Hello everyone, my name is Charlie McLaughlin and I'm a grade 11 student at Yarmouth Consolidated Memorial High School, and I'm excited to be facilitating today's Careers in Technology sponsored by IBM as part of Take Our Kids to Work Day. We'll spend the next 20 minutes talking with our incredible panel of tech experts, and after hearing their stories, we will open it up to your questions. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each call home in Kanata. As we gather today on these lands, we are in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers, sisters, two-spirited peoples, and family to honor and respect the four directions, lands, waters, plants, and animals, and ancestors that walked before us, and all of the wonderful elements of creation that exist. As we reflect on the historical and ongoing relationship between Canada's education system and Indigenous peoples, we are highly aware of how much work there is to do to repair the relationship with Indigenous students, parents, families, and communities. We recognize that the violation of many treaties by the Government of Canada and the impact of colonialism, including the legacy of the residential schools and the 60s scoop, have resulted in lasting harms, intergenerational trauma, and the ongoing injustices to Indigenous people. We acknowledge our responsibilities on settlers of these traditional territories, and as a learning organization, working in and with the public education sector, we reaffirm our commitment to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures, and to take concrete actions as identified in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's 2015 report. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people who call this nation home. Today, we are thrilled to have with us Tamar Hudgens, CEO of TechSpark, Tiffany Jansen, software developer at IBM, and Lucy Ho, founder and executive director of HackerGirl. Welcome. Would everyone like to say hello?
Hello, Charlie. Hello, everyone. Excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
So the first question is one I'll ask to Tamar. So you launched TechSpark in 2015 to provide equitable tech education. When you were in high school, did you consider a career in tech? And if so, what did that look like for you?
I did not consider a career in tech, Charlie. I actually considered a career in advertising. I was obsessed with marketing and advertising, and so my elective courses were mainly focused on comtech and media. But it was those special moments during lunch hour when I know there are a lot of students out there that know what I'm talking about. When you're in the library, you know the school doesn't allow you to go on social media, right? Well, my best friend and I found a computer that had a loophole, actually two computers that had a loophole. And so back then, in the early 2000s, we used to have Black Planet, T.Wire, MySpace as our core social media platforms. And we used to use Photoshop and create our own pages for those social media accounts. And then we would go on to websites and find the code. And that's where it started for me, was really learning how to manipulate the code, to change the cursor and to add music and to create a more lively experience. So that's where it started for me. That's when I realized that technology was an area that I was interested in. And as a young girl, my father was also into engineering. And, again, just as a child, I really feel like the seeds were planted at that time. It was just being exposed to, computers being built from scratch and motherboards all over the place and, adding lights and customizing your own, computer towers and all of those things. It became the norm to me back in the early 2000s, late 90s. And so I'm so blessed and happy to be doing the work that I'm doing right now. In the technology space. I never thought I would be here, but I'm ever grateful for it.
That's awesome. Since we have a little bit of extra time, I had another quick question for you. While running TechSpark, what is the biggest lesson you've learned along the way?
So for me, the biggest lesson was understanding my why. And that actually started when I went back to high school. I was invited by one of my high school teachers to come and speak to a group of young girls. And at that moment, I had met a young girl who was a teenage mother, and she was really struggling. And she came to me and asked me, questions about how she could, really become successful as a student, as a mother living on her own, and still going to school and not really receiving the support that she was looking for. And at that moment, I felt this really strong connection to her. I wasn't a teenage mother, but being a young Black woman, understanding the barriers that we often face, I felt this thing in my heart where it was like I didn't want to see her or youth like her struggling. I didn't like the idea of young people feeling like they didn't have someone behind them to support them, to push them, adults who are supposed to be our allies, adults who are supposed to mentor us and push us in the right direction, and just feeling like she didn't have anyone. And that's where, for me, the seed was planted to create TechSpark. It was really about giving young people who are often overlooked, who are often, systemically oppressed, and really giving those individuals the opportunities to, create technology, to have access to advanced forms of learning that, the schools may not have had access to, or their parents may not have had access to. So for me, it was really about understanding my why. So whenever I feel like, giving up, or when I feel like things are really hard, I remember that young girl, and I remember that there are other girls and other boys like her who are struggling, who do need the help. Even for those students who aren't struggling but are doing really well, but still need that additional support and opportunity. So for me, the biggest lesson was understanding my why, knowing who I'm helping and why I'm helping them, and always coming back to that foundation.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. Now a question for Lucy. Your bio mentions often being the only woman in the room in the tech industry. Have you noticed a shift to that experience in the last few years, and what more needs to be done?
Yeah, that's a great question. One that I get asked a lot. It's been many years since I've been working in the tech sector, but when I started my career in tech, that is true. I oftentimes found myself being the only woman in the room, the only woman of color in the room, and probably one of the youngest people in the room. So it was really challenging, and it did make me feel like I didn't belong, which was really unfortunate because I feel like there's a space for everyone in the tech sector. But fortunately enough, a lot has changed since then. So there are a lot more girls and women getting involved into STEM. And that's partly because of organizations like the Learning Partnership, HackerGal, TechSpark, the women that are on the panel today. We're bringing a lot of awareness to the reasons why women need to be represented in this space, which is super important. And I always say representation matters. So what can we do about that? It's amplifying the voices of women working in the sector. Talking about the role models that you believe in or you look up to in the tech sector is super important, and teachers bringing awareness to women in STEM, women in tech, roles in technology that students can get more familiar with.
All right, excellent. So thank you, Lucy. So next up is a question for Tiffany. So you actually started your career in the fashion industry. And then you pivoted into tech. So what inspired you to make that leap?
Thanks for the question. Well, I'll take you back a little bit. When I was growing up in high school, we didn't have any coding courses or even really computer classes. I grew up in a really small town. So for me growing up, I always thought I knew I wanted to do something creative. I knew I wanted to do something that involved problem solving, working with great team members. But for me, because I didn't even know coding or really anything about technology, I associated that with fashion. So after high school, I pursued a career in fashion and stayed in fashion for a while until I went back to school for university. And it was in my last year at university, it was required to take a very basic coding course. If it wasn't required, I probably wouldn't have even taken it, but it was. And I instantly fell in love with it. The idea that there was a skill that kind of was like a superpower. I could build anything that came to mind, which was I still think is the coolest thing possible. And from there, I decided to pivot from fashion into technology, specifically coding. And I really want to highlight that even if you're on one path or one journey and you discover something else, you can always make that pivot and it's never too late. And the last thing I want to touch on is I love that because when I was growing up, I didn't have you can't be what you can't see, and no, I didn't have any women in tech role models. And I love that at IBM we have a program for STEM for Girls where our goal is to reach as many girls across Canada to encourage them to consider a career in STEM.
All right, thank you very much. I had one more question here. So you host a YouTube channel called Tiff in Tech. What is your hope that young people take away from your videos?
Yes, I do. When I was breaking into tech, I felt like I didn't have a community or support system initially, and I didn't want anyone to ever feel that way again. So when I started doing YouTube, and still to this day, my goal was to be kind of like a virtual best friend and mentor to ensure that anyone who was considering getting into technology, showing them that there's a spot for everyone in tech, and you don't have to be a math genius or a math whiz to get into the industry, and really trying to make it accessible for everyone.
All right, awesome. So I would like to ask one more question to the entire panel before we go into student questions. So can you share how critical thinking and global citizenship, two of the global competency skills, factor into your work with technology? Let's start with Tiffany.
Thank you. For the critical thinking aspect of it, that's a skill that I use every single day. With coding, we are constantly solving different problems, and one of the most exciting things is there often isn't just one way to solve that problem. So I use critical thinking to break down a problem we are trying to solve, and also to have a deep understanding of it so we can solve it in the best way possible. For global citizenship, it's essential for me to be educated and aware of what's going on in the world, because I'm not building products just for me. I'm building products for everyone else. And in order to do that successfully, I need to have an understanding of what's going on in the world.
All right, excellent. Lucy, you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. So critical thinking and global citizenship are two of HackerGal's 6 future-ready competencies. So what does that mean? That means we build all of our programs around these core competencies. Critical thinking, in my opinion, is the foundation of problem solving. It's connecting an idea with information and building a solution around it. So I think when it comes to technology and building solutions around tech, it's so important to use critical thinking in everything that you do to understand if your solutions are actually well received and how can you improve that. In terms of global citizenship, I think this is an amazing skill that is so highly sought after in the tech sector, because it's all about how do we use technology to better the world, and really use empathy as the foundation of how we build solutions using tech. And what in our programs at HackerGal, we always say that technology can be used for good, and that we can create tools and solutions that build sustainable solutions for the world. So two very, very important skills that I think are very valid in the tech sector.
All right, excellent. Tamar?
Yes, so global citizenship and critical thinking are just two of the core competencies that we use to build our curriculum. So TechSpark was the first organization to create the first tech entrepreneurship course. It's an accredited course for grade 11 students. It's currently running in 10 schools in Durham and Peel region. And the way that we actually use those two skills in the course is by teaching students the art of problem solving. And yes, it is an art, because not everyone can solve problems. As much as we think that it's an easy skill, it's something that you really have to work at. And so in that course, the students have to learn how to collect and analyze consumer data to be able to pinpoint the pain or the problem for that consumer to then create a solution that comes in the form of a product or service. When it comes to the global citizenship piece, we have media that we share throughout the course that students can engage with, entrepreneurs from around the world sharing their experiences as an entrepreneur solving problems in their country or their respective communities, and bringing that insight into the course also helps our students to be well-rounded entrepreneurs.
All right, awesome, thank you. So thank you very much, panel. So there have been some great student questions coming in and out throughout the session. So let's take some time to answer them. So if you're attending today and want to ask any of our panelists a question, please type it into the chat. So let's start with Tiffany, because you started in fashion. So was there something that surprised you about a career in tech?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the things that I don't want to say surprised me, but I was super thankful for was when I broke into the tech industry, the amount of support and the community that is within tech. There's a huge community that really supports and uplifts others, and that's still one of my favorite parts about being in the industry, is being part of this wonderful community and really building such a huge part of the future together.
All right, excellent. So the next one is for Tamar. So how does it feel to own your own company?
Amazing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Sometimes I think, if someone offered me $1 million a year, would I take that, or would I continue being an entrepreneur, being the CEO of TechSpark? And I would 100% remain the CEO of my own company, and mainly because of the freedom that it gives me. I am a mother of 2. I have an 11-year-old and a 1-year-old. And for me, time is extremely valuable. And being my own boss, I'm able to manage my time. When you're starting a company at the very beginning, you put a lot of your personal time into building that company. Oftentimes, relationships do suffer, friendships do take a back seat. But I'm finally at the place in my career where I feel confident enough in my team and myself as well to take a step back when I need to and allow my team to do their best work. And oftentimes, I always say to our students that the best reflection of a leader is their team and how well their team is able to manage without them there. And so for me, being my own boss is something that is an extreme blessing that I don't take for granted.
All right, excellent. So Lucy, what advice do you have for young people trying to get into tech?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I always say to students looking to get into tech is to try everything. You don't know what you're good at until you try. So I feel like there's so many different coding languages that you can try, that it's not a one size fits all. If you like making designs for mobile apps, you can use your graphic design skills to do that. If you like project management and you really are passionate about tech, there's a role for you. So I feel like in today's society where you can learn anything at the tip of your fingers, try everything, get involved, find your community that supports you, and you never know where your career can take you.
Excellent. All right. So next one is for Tiffany. Technology has been very helpful, but has also created a lot of harm. As young students looking to get into this field of technology, what would be good and safe avenues for students to get inside of this field and outside of simply, social media platforms?
Yes, that's a great question. My biggest piece of advice, and something that I try and follow all the time as well, is find mentors or people who are qualified in the tech industry that you really trust and that you really can trust. And when you are learning about technology and taking different courses, make sure they are vetted, make sure they are ones that your teachers or parents are encouraging you to take. As we all know, don't just trust anything on the internet. So really find people you trust in your school or your family to ensure you are taking courses that are accurate. And there's so much possibility to do good with technology. And when we start young and learning about that possibility, the possibilities are endless.
All right, excellent. So next one, I'm going to ask this to you, Tamar. So Katerina, she wants to know if you could go back to when you first started your business, what would you do differently, or what advice would you give us?
What I would do differently, that's a really good question. I think I would trust myself more. I would give more trust to others. I feel like when you're an entrepreneur and you're so close to your business, it becomes your baby and you protect it with every fiber in your being. And oftentimes we don't allow others to come in and help us for fear that they may either take our idea or ruin what we've created or just run amok. And so for me, I feel what I would change is leaning more on my intuition, trusting people more, and allowing those to help me so that I can focus on the bigger picture.
All right. So this question is for all of you. So Chloe wants to know, did you take any co-ops in school that helped you to prepare for where you are now?
I did. I took co-op in grade 12. I did my co-op at Mississauga Convention Center. They did events and marketing, and as I mentioned early on, I was obsessed with advertising and getting into an advertising agency. Unfortunately, ad agencies only took post-secondary students, so the convention center was my closest option, and it was extremely helpful. I would encourage everyone who has the option to take co-op to do so, even when you are in college or university and you have the co-op option. I went to Centennial College, and I chose that college because it had the longest co-op option compared to the other schools that were offering my program. And for me, I was able to use that to get my foot in the door and get hired before my internship was up. So it's definitely an opportunity that I would take. And just as much as they interview you, you have to interview them. And you have to make sure that the culture fits with who you are. And it's one where you can grow as well, because if it's not, it can be very damaging, especially being young and being in a new industry. You really want to make sure that you're going into a space that is safe for you to grow, learn, ask questions. And if it's not, it's okay to step away and try something else or work somewhere else that's going to give you the recognition and the respect that you deserve for the work that you're putting in for the company.
All right. Great answer. So the next one, Lucy, what do you think is the most rewarding part of your job?
Man, there is so many things that are rewarding about my job. I get to meet so many students across Canada that have told me that they never thought that they can code. And when they had that aha moment and can now say, like, I can now create technology, or I can use technology to build solutions, that is the most rewarding thing to hear as somebody that's so passionate about closing the gender gap in tech. I get to meet teachers that may have not felt confident about technology and STEM and bringing STEM into the classroom. And then when they do programs that have to do with code, they're like, wow, the kids are teaching me how to code. So it's just amazing to see the shift in mentality that teachers and students have about technology, especially nowadays because technology is integrated in everything that we do. So it's amazing to see these students have that confidence in themselves.
Awesome. All right. So Tiffany, Sarah wants to know, what is one of the most interesting things about your job, and what is your favorite thing that you do?
My favorite thing and most interesting thing I do, well, favorite thing about my job would definitely be the people. I work with some incredibly brilliant and fun people, and it makes going to work every day a lot of fun. So I would say number one being the people. The most interesting part of my job is that no days are the same. I am working on different problems, working on building different things always, and I absolutely love that I can be creative, that I can use both essentially my right and left side of my brain every day, the creativity side, but also the logic side. So that to me is the most interesting.
All right, excellent. So I have one more question before we wrap it up. This one's for all of you. So what continues to motivate you today? We can start with Tamar.
My children are my biggest motivation. For me, it's really about leaving a legacy for my girls to walk into. Also, as I mentioned earlier, it's really the students that we work so hard for, and really understanding that as a leader, as a CEO or executive director of an organization, our role is to serve others. And the sooner that we realize that, the better off we'll be, and the sooner we can reach our goals and be more successful. Really about serving other people. So, my answer.
I can chime in there as well. I would say that what motivates me to do my job every day is, of course, the girls that we serve through Hackell. As I mentioned, the most rewarding thing about my job is meeting all of these girls that never thought that they could code and now are creators of tech. And I think that impact that we're having in these communities really makes me so motivated to get up every morning and to do things that we do, deliver the programs in unique communities that may not have ever had access to technology in Canada, and really amplify the voices of women working in tech so more girls can be leaders of tech tomorrow.
And for myself, I would say continuing to build products that are helping people, solving big making big solutions for people, making their lives easier, really continues to inspire and motivate me. And then on the other side of things, continuing to inspire others to break into the tech industry, that seeing someone who didn't think they could code write their first line of code and hello world comes up on screen, that to me, it's the best feeling ever and continues to motivate me.
All right, so that about wraps up our time today. So thank you for your participation, and huge thanks to our panelists, Tamar, Tiffany, and Lucy. And big thanks to all students participating and for your great questions. Diversity truly drives innovation, and it is clear that you belong here. We hope that today has inspired you to explore careers in technology for your own future. The recording of this session will be available later today on the Learning Partnerships YouTube page, and you'll receive it along with a survey link via email tomorrow. Don't forget to fill out your survey for your chance at winning one of 7 $100 gift cards. Thanks again, and have a great Take Our Kids to Work day.